Mirrors and Dreams, Book 2 of the Unseen Scar series, written and narrated by C.R. Saxon. Chapter 18. Relaxing with Denalia was always a joy, but I'm sorry, I just can't stand it anymore. Please turn it off. No, one more. I'm certain you'll like this one. And why not start with it? Zephyr rubbed at his temples. I'm getting a headache. Denalia shrugged. I hoped you'd like some of these. One more. The new song started. Onyx's eyes closed, bracing against alien notes. How did the sciences convince everyone this was music? It ended, and Denalia turned a hopeful expression to him. Well, it was closer to music. Exasperation sighed out of her. Why do you hate it? The notes. They're unnatural, and I can feel the beat shaking my organs. There were some unusual instruments. Unable to take it anymore, the prince tapped the little speaker, ending the ruckus. Denalia's ears perked at Zephyr's hesitation. Yes? Have you ever considered a memory and realized it didn't make sense, as if parts were missing? Denalia thought. I guess. There's memory fragments from when I was really little. Why? A nervous chuckle escaped. Golden hands skipped, and their alarm chimed. I had a dream. It reminded me of something, but I can only remember fragments of it as well. Lunchtime's over. Standing up, she brushed crumbs from her lap. Ask an adult who was there. They usually remember what you forget from childhood. Zephyr chuckled when she gave him a wink. Thanks. Waving, she headed off. That won't work, though. There were never adults in those memories. Just me and Ferdinan. But what did that mean? Why were those the only disjointed memories? Would Ferdinan remember? Falling asleep in class was unacceptable. Sleeping for 2 days? If John had called a healer, or psych. Missing 2 days' worth of medicine didn't purge it from his body, only lowered the concentration enough to wake up. But Ferdinan would fix it now. Fog hindered his brain. Bony hands ran over the many things in his lab. Tools, inventions, supplies. A shelf deep in his closet held medicines he'd created for various people, one of which he didn't remember until he was holding it. Can't recall your own creations? It was a nasty concoction. Of all the things the council destroyed, illicit drugs were their one failure, though they hid it pretty well. Memories of roaming an addict's camp flooded his mind. Most people on the islands didn't know such places existed. Many drugs quietly stored themselves within the human body, making them difficult to fully purge. One such drug plagued Chuzo's lower societies after years of conflict with Mundan. Official reports denied the existence of it, as propriety would demand, but he'd overheard his general referring to it as chemical warfare to his father. Chuzo's master's response was swift and brutal, but for those affected it was a long-fought battle. Speeding up the detoxification was one of the first medical requests he took, after the Duke turned it down. Lots of research, trial and error, led to this effective drink. Too effective. Even with careful monitoring, it killed the healthiest of addicts. But it did exactly what it was designed to do. It forcibly removed drugs and other contaminants from the body. Despite the danger, it was eventually used for those exposed to other harmful substances, ingested or not. Preparing the treatment took minutes. Waiting for curfew, hours. Sending Goya away took longer still. Alone at last, Ferdinan locked himself in the bathroom at the back of his lab's closet. 3 doses in 4 hours. That was all. First he set 2 alarms, one for an hour from now and the other for 3 hours later. Then he poured each dose and set them far enough apart he wouldn't knock any over. Having seen what this did, he didn't want to take any chances. Drinking would be enough of a chore after the first glass. Sweetness choked him. Sweet, thick nastiness. But he forced down the first dose. A thinner drink would have been nicer, but his stomach could only hold so much. Sitting down, the skeleton waited for it to take hold. Uncomfortable warmth swallowed him. Thirst set in, but no water, not for an hour after the last dose. Feeling hot was a rarity. The sensation was, Even stripping down couldn't stem the sweating. Suffer as much as you can. It'll never be enough. An alarm sounded. The first hour was finally over. Is this really a good idea? Drooping eyes reminded him he didn't have a choice. A shaky hand grabbed the next glass. He gulped down its contents as quickly as he could. This is supposed to be suffering. You can do better. Ringing filled his ears. Fatigue grabbed him, throwing him to the ground. Dizziness. His heart rate skyrocketed. Jolts of electricity pulsed through him. Even crawling into the shower and turning on the water couldn't quench his thirst. What have I done to people? What sort of torture have I created? Panting, gasping. Something wet slid down his upper lip. When he wiped it away, he expected blood. Somehow a laugh escaped an impossibly dry throat. I'm dying of thirst and my nose is running. I really am wasteful. You haven't agonized nearly enough. It doesn't matter. After returning from South Chuzo, Ferdinan was beaten within an inch of his life. He should have died. Coughing then, he thought it was the most painful thing he'd ever experienced, but as convulsions gripped him, he realized how naive he was. Helpless he laid as his body spasmed. Limbs violently moved of their own accord. Tingling took over his extremities. Ah! Swallowing back screams was useless. Contracted muscles made a Charlie horse feel like a minor stress knot. Weak. Electricity, ringing ears, clenched muscles, thirst. Water, please. Time stopped. Suffer. He needed to suffer for his sins. That voice taunted him for being unable to atone for them all. He was going to break. Then the second alarm sounded. The third drink. The last dose. I can't do it. Useless child. Ferdinand panted. Control over his body was sporadic. Eventually he grabbed the glass. The straw mocked him. It never reached his mouth. What have I done to people? Pathetic waste of flesh. Pushing forward, his face stopped an inch from the glass. He fought down screams and ignored the laughter. I can't do it. Worthless child. Numbness took hold of his hands and feet. The electric shocks intensified. Tilting his head, he drew on every ounce of self-discipline and forced himself to drink. Blinding pain hit. Air vanished. Light exploded. Sound echoed. Shutting his eyes did nothing. Cool air hit sweat-drenched skin, encasing him in ice. Yet it did nothing to temper the inferno inside him. Black spots blotted out reality. They danced, making him nauseous. Please let this kill me. Every muscle in his hand contracted. All movement of his legs was lost. The muscles in his back clenched. Unable to curl into a ball, screams coursed out. His chest constricted. Unnatural green eyes shone with crazed excitement. Finding a keeper for Kamua was easier than expected. The luck. Not only did Ferdinand do so much for her, but he was also perfectly suited to the broken histories she kept alive. 3 before she came here, and Ferdinand. But 6 still awaited anxiously. Hopefully there'd be 1 less after tonight. Melancholy filled her heart. The day I find a guardian for you, old friend, the dream will truly be over. She slipped into Yuya's room and pulled an ancient skeleton key from her pocket. The comforting weight snuggled pleasantly against her palm. Ogani, it'll be sad losing you, but training a guardian takes a while, especially since the girl wasn't from a tribe or camp. I'm relieved you can sleep peacefully, young one. Hesitantly, Oya placed the key on the girl's belly. What do you think? She's compatible. Her mind and heart suit you perfectly. Leaning back, Oya crossed her arms and grinned, but not for long. Delicate hands tugged at the steel locket around her neck, showing her frustration. A sigh and a nod. Ogani, she survived being crushed and burned nearly to death. She's more than resilient enough. But, in the end, the choice is yours. Warmth emanated from the key when she picked it up. It didn't disagree with her, but it had another suggestion. Considering the future Oya was facing, she studied the cord wrapped around her hand. What was once a single thread, fine and silver as a spider's web, was now dozens. Various shades of blue and purple and orange and red weaved around that silver thread, and she hadn't made a dent. The more she searched, the more she found. Oya sighed. How things would turn out. Ogani, it's still a cruel thing to ask of anyone. Why isn't it break yet? I really need my family's help. Everything was out of control. Whatever was happening inside his ally's head, I need to talk to someone about this, but the people he trusted who could help were either at home or weren't allowed near Ferdinan. The 13th year suite, his first stop, was empty as usual. Next was Ferdinand's lab. Hopefully the gent was there. His ally would randomly disappear, something that was more common since Oya arrived, but wherever the third hiding spot was, John hadn't found it. Every step to the lab was a struggle. What should he say? 1,000 thoughts came, but all of them would drive the gent away. Why me? Shouldn't his family be the ones worrying? Is Master Dea reporting any of this to the Samalts? But Ferdinand's family. It seemed they only worried over Zephyr's health and return to school. Why is my family the only ones bothered by Ferdinand's outrageous behavior? Walking down the hall, John stopped in front of his ally's lab. There were no lights or movement, just the colors of a fading dawn through the window. Great. Going to his own lab, John considered his options. There weren't many. I'm going in anyway, he announced to the universe at large. Maybe there was a clue? But if his ally was gone, it was unlikely he'd find Oya to help look. At least he could set out breakfast. Standing up, John rubbed his face. The primal shriek of a wounded animal leapt down the hall and bashed against his ears. What? Sprinting out, John dashed to Ferdinand's lab, punched in his access code, and shot to the back of the closet. Lying on the bathroom floor was Ferdinand's body, warped in pain, unconscious face frozen in that scream. Landing on his knees, John shook the gent, but the skeleton didn't stir, didn't bend. What is this? He isn't breathing. Neither could John find a pulse. Come on! No pulse, no breath. Neither would the skeleton's body relax. Don't you dare do this to me! It wasn't easy, but John found a way to manually pump his ally's heart.